What is up, guys? We are super excited to be here. Toid's DIY Audio with the dude HifiVega and DIY Audio Guy. Today, we're going to be talking about tools. And we tried to do some tools that you may not be aware of, some things that you might, we're trying to stay away from, just the table saws and things of that nature, trying to go a little bit more of things that can be helpful to you that you may not necessarily know of. So, guys, why don't you say hello and get us started?
Yo, what's poppin'? It's your boy, the dude, HifiVega. I'm pumped. What about you, Justin?
I'm surprised to learn we're not going to talk about table saws. I thought we were going to talk about that. That's the top tool on the list for me.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, we're not just going to be. We all have some big things on here that we think are good values that we're going to tell you about and why. But in general, we're going to try to stay towards tools that you may not be aware of. So guys, today is actually February 8th. It's going to be Valentine's Day real quick. So before, we get to tools, I got to ask you guys, Valentine's Day, are there tools you asked for Valentine's Day, or what are you doing?
Valentine's Day is not for guys. I don't know if you knew this or not.
It is in my family.
Oh, well, you pulled off some kind of secret. And I hope that your wife's not watching right now, because she's going to find out that Valentine's Day is about women, for women, by women.
What? Oh, no, it's by Hallmark for women. That was the exact point, guys. We're probably not going to get many tools for Valentine's Day, so make sure to treat yourself to something that we talk about. All right, DIY Audio Guy, why don't you start us off with a cool tool that you found useful in your videos or in your shop?
All right, I'm going to start with, I got a whole pile of tools over here, so I'm just going to grab one and start talking about it. There we go. This right here is one of the tools that I've had since I started building speakers. This is a corner clamp. And the interesting story behind this is I bought it off Amazon, and I loved it. I used it for several years. Then they built a Harbor Freight in my town, and I went and I saw the exact same thing, same colors and everything. And whoever sold me this thing on Amazon sent me a Harbor Freight one that was half.
They doubled the price.
I got burned. Some joker on Amazon conned me, and I bought a Harbor Freight corner clamp. But this is great, and it's heavy, and it's got these quick releases here. And you hit that quick release, and it's got the screws on it. And what I love about these is I can position things. So I'll position everything, get it all lined up, then pull the board out, lay on all the glue, and clamp it back down. And it holds strong enough that I can just use this on a small project. So if I've got 4 of these, I can clamp butt joints just fine.
Well, the one thing I always say is it's best to have 8 if you can, because you can glue both sides. It's hard to do. I mean, you can do it with 4, don't get me wrong, but I like 8 of those. The one thing I always wondered about those, and I haven't checked the Harbor Freights, have you ever checked a 90 on it to see, is it actually 90? Have you checked it with like a speed square or something?
No, I never have. I never thought to do that until just the very second right here.
I'm always curious, like if, did they, put a speed square on it and see how it actually measures.
I'll do that the next time I use it.
That's the nice version of them. They actually make a cheaper version. I've got some of those, and I really don't recommend those because they don't have the quick release and they have the small turnouts, so they're not nearly as useful as the one that you just showed. I definitely like that one.
I got a couple of different styles, and these are just easier to deal with. They just, I mean, I like them. And what I do is I brad nail everything. So I hold it down with the clamps, put a couple of clamps on there, use the clamps as extra hands, brad nail it, move on.
So, what's interesting is we're talking about getting straight cuts, right? Not straight cuts, but getting straight glues together. And one of the things that I found helpful in my shop is the Wixie. Are you guys familiar with the Wixie?
What's the Wixie?
No. The Wixie is really cool. I actually don't have one on me. It's out in my workshop. I keep it on my saw. It's magnetic, and you put it on your table saw itself.
Oh, yeah.
And you set it at 0, and then you put it on your blade, and then you set the angle of your blade, 45, or 0 or whatever. That way, when you cut the wood or the material, it's actually cutting. Your blade is actually cutting at the right direction. I'll tell you guys, that is in excellent. So they're so cheap. They're like $30, but they will save you. I had a table saw once. I was always wondering what was going on. It was like a degree off when it was supposed to be at 0. It was like I was cutting at 1 degree off. I'm always like, why is nothing fitting right? I'll tell you, man. And it's so easy to use. So
I didn't know it was called a Wixie. But I've seen them in use before. And it's definitely one of those things that's on my to-do list, my wish list.
Yeah, it's the brand. I mean, there's other ones that do it, but Wixie's kind of been the original one. They're like the OG. Yeah,
so to speak.
Exactly. And so I always recommend that one because you never know, with other brands, that's one of the things, like when you're trying to get good tolerances, you go with a good brand.
Right. Exactly.
If you're not really concerned about tolerances, then, whatever. But it's just an angle gauge, but it's digital. And I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I need to get one of those as well because my table saw is trash. I'm actually going to be upgrading my table saw at some point. But I have a pick that goes directly with Justin's. If you want to share the screen, Nick, that I put on there. Now, they sell these on Rockler, and I've got some, but they're very, very expensive. You'll get a very small one. What this is a silicone mat, like a table protector for crafts. So this is 3 foot by 2 foot.
That's a good idea.
Put it straight over something when you're gluing stuff up. Glue it up on this. Peels off easy.
Peels right
you're ready
off,
to roll. And at $33, this one I think is like about the cheapest one you can get for this size.
I like to use one of those glue brushes, and what I find myself doing is laying the glue brush on my work table, and then now I've got glue on the work table. I've got to come back with a sander later and sand it down and re-smooth everything.
That's an interesting idea. I would have never thought about something like that. That's a good call, and I don't know very many people using something like that in their shop either.
No, nope. And it's just like once the glue dries, it's just easy, simple peel, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now the guys in the chat are talking about router tables. So I think that me and HifiVega should mention some of our picks. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of mine, which is a router. Actually, I'll pull up mine and then you pull up yours. So The truth of the matter is router tables in general are relatively inexpensive to buy. And so what you can do is buy an insert, and then you can make your own router table. There's a couple things to look for, I think, when you're buying an insert. So let me go ahead and share my screen.
While you're pulling that up, that's the way to go. I bought my router table, and I didn't know anything about router tables. And so getting a table is a good idea, but an insert is a much better solution because you can put that insert in anything.
Yeah, and this particular one by Woodpecker I like because they actually sell, like a lot of people don't think about this, but you want this to be flat in there and you want it to be cut fairly well. And so they actually sell a template. It's like $20 for the template, but you can just use a 1/2-inch router bit and cut it and go directly into it. And you can use that template as many times as you want. So anyone without like a CNC or something. These also have something that they have these holes that you see right here and here. And what that's for is if you have a router, like they're showing you this Triton here, but I like the Bosch 1617.
Yeah, that's what I run.
Yeah, this thing it's fantastic. But this, if you notice, it has this little incremental adjustment depth. So there's a little wrench that you stick through that hole and you move it and it'll incrementally bring it up and down to get to the right depth. And then you can use these Craig jig depth things. Did you guys ever use these?
I've got some brass ones. They're not Craig, and they work really well. I like the Craig ones because you can sit them kind of over the top of the bit. They're kind of arch shaped. There they are right there. Yeah. So you can use those for a lot more. The ones I've got are just brass bars that are calibrated perfectly, and I use those quite a bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, once you get that router set up, then you can just set it right at 1/8, 1/2 inch and just kind of incrementally bring it up. It saves you so much time and scrap and money. It's definitely worth it in my opinion.
Yeah. And my pick is very similar. And the thing about this is I'm not sure about the one you picked, but this one, you don't even have to have a router with a depth adjustment because this moves up and down for you. So even if it's a fixed base, you can put it straight on it and move up and down. If you can see up here in this corner, even on this one, they have a Bosch under table base that's only like $50. And if you have that Bosch router, you can actually just buy this and forego the JESM if you want to. But this one's universal. What was the retail price on the one you shared?
It was about 100 and something. I can't remember.
I think they're all pretty close. Somewhere, the base model is like 170 to 200, somewhere in that range.
I paid more than that for my Bosch router table.
Yeah.
And so there's two different styles of the Bosch router table, and one of them is it's open, and the other one is a cabinet. And I wouldn't get the open one; I'd get the cabinet one because the amount of dust a router kicks up. The cabinet one, you close the door, you can put your dust collection inside underneath it, and you can not be fighting dust constantly. So I regret my router table purchase. I would have, if I could go back in time, if I knew what I knew now about how to set this stuff up, I would have bought this because that is cheaper than a router table. And again, you can set that in anything, right? Any workbench you've got, you can just drop it right in there.
Yeah, and you can always build a new top. And mine was about 130. So the difference would be if you have a router like the 1617 that already has the depth adjustment on it, then you can save yourself $50.
Right.
If you don't, if you have a router like I have a Porter cable router that's also a really good router, but it doesn't have any type of depth adjustment like this would be perfect for that.
Because that's how it clamps onto the motor, right?
Exactly. It clamps onto into the motor of the router. And
a popular, like the Porter Cable 960 is a pretty popular router, and it doesn't have that depth adjustment. I will tell you, I have a Ryobi. It's the base model. It's like $75. It does have the depth adjustment on it.
Really? That's surprising.
And it's I use it with the Ryobi table just because, I had someone give me the table. So I was like, well, might as well match them up. But yeah, it works just like that.
See, and I think that's the great thing about routers in general is you have all these different attachments. You don't have to go out and buy yourself $1,000 router table. You can buy one of these, buy yourself 3/4 inch. I double my MDF when I put one of these in. So I do 2 3/4 inch tops. It's 1.5 inches. And that's because this is pretty thick and pretty heavy. So you want to make sure that you have a good base underneath it that's not going to sag. But yeah, and mine, and I'm sure these do too. If you look at all these little, looks like screw holes on the outside of that, that's just these little set screws that you just kind of screw up and down to get it completely level with your table.
Yep. You got to get them.
And that's important. If you,
yeah,
that's really important. You'll mess some stuff up if it's not level with the table.
So me and Justin have some fighting words about routers because I believe that one of the best value router bits you can buy are Yoneco router bits. And in particular, I use their chamfer bits quite often. It's like $30. You get like 5 of them. Really inexpensive. But Justin, you don't like the Yoneco bits, do you?
And I'll tell you why. I was doing I had one of their flush trim bits, and I was making some rings for my home theater subwoofer build for the port tubes. I don't know if y'all seen that video or not. Mm-hmm. And when I was done building those rings, I routed out 6-7 rings. That Yonico bit was toast. Of course, it was 1 inch thick material. It was this is some odd material I picked up for free at a cabinet shop that was extras. It was a plywood with a MDF veneer on it. So it was 1 inch thick. It was really sturdy material. And by the time I was done, that bit was just terrible. It caught on everything. And I said, I'm done with the Yonico bits. I'm rapidly reaching that point where I'm trying to upgrade from just the cheapest tool possible to something slightly better. And like, for example, in this guy right here, I keep permanently mounted a white side bit. So this is my very first router. It's just a skill router. It's a perfectly fine router. And what I did with this thing is I put that 3/4 inch just straight bit in there, or 1/4 inch straight bit, and then mounted my Jasper circle jig. And that stays mounted permanently. That does not come out of the Jasper circle jig. So I have to fool with trying to switch things out.
So we both did Jasper's circle jig, and we're going to get to HifiVega here in a minute because he has something he wants to add to the stream. I think this is really important to note that a good router is something that we think is very important if you're going to be doing any type of DIY work, whether it be DIY speaker building or whatever, because you can do just about anything on it. You can create rabbits with it. You can create chamfers with it. You can do pretty much anything. And like you said, you can create circles with the Jasper jig, which is one of the best ways to create circles, hands down. out of any tool if you just have a router. So that you can easily recess your speakers with a Jasper jig. It's I think one of the tools that if you're going to be doing speaker building, subwoofer building, and you want to recess a speaker flush is a must-have.
Yeah, now they're making them metal Jasper jigs because the patent has expired. So now a lot of these companies that are CNC shops that do a lot of tooling for car audio stuff, they're doing custom metal Jasper jigs.
I did not know that. Did you want to show us? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I said because if you've messed with a Jasper jig, you've probably broken one at some point.
I never have. No, I use mine a lot. I've never broke. Now, I'll tell you this though. One of my friends, Jeff, it doesn't seem like he's on today. Lost his pin, which by the way, you can get a replacement pin just about anywhere. They're just 1/8 inch dowel, metal dowels. They're not anything real special, but he lost the first day he had his Jasper jig, and he wrote the company and said, man, I lost it. And you know what they did? They sent him a whole new, not just the metal dowel, but that whole little, it comes with like a little package with screws. And so they just sent him a whole new one to him free of charge. I mean, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty nice. I mean, companies take care of you like that. You remember in the future when you go to buy something else. And
especially with, I guess, all that competition now.
Right. Talking about router bits, I've got 2 sets here from 12 volt tools or 12etools.com. These are quality router bits. Mobile Solutions sells some for a little. It's actually kind of a lot more, but these are just as good. You get a basic set. You get a chamfer bit, a round over, a trim, flush trim, a rabbiting bit, and then you also get a small. What is that bit?
It looks like an upkit bit.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Upcut, yeah.
Yeah, straight bit. How big are those roundover bits in that chamfer bit? That looks like a pretty steep angle there.
I think the chamfer.
It says rabbits 1 1/4.
Excellent.
With
that's
4
a,
extra.
That's a pretty good deal. Yeah, I like that.
At 119, it's not bad at all.
And this is the one thing that people don't. Rabbit bits are nice to have, especially if you just cut it just a little bit too small. You can just run it. And I'll tell you a trick to the rabbit bits. And this is something that one of my friends had. He said, man, I have these different bearings. One's too big, one's too small. I just can't get the size that I need now that I screwed up. And so here's my tip for anyone that's using rabbit bits. Take some masking tape, painter's tape, whatever, and wrap it around that bearing until you get the right cut. So you're not always going to have the perfect bearing for it. So some of that comes right off at the end, and it'll hold through. It should hold through, hopefully, your cut.
Yeah. And
I haven't had an issue yet.
One more to go with this. They have that's the 101 set. This is the 102. I'd recommend both of them, even though there's an overlap bit being this flush trim bit right here. But you get a different, steeper chamfer bit. And then you get the radius cove right here, which you're not going to use that, but this bit right here.
Oh, yeah.
That's the bit you want. And this bit right here, the spiral flush trim bit.
Yeah, the spiral flush trim bit is very nice. And this one is more of a pattern bit, is what they call it. And the pattern bit's nice if you're up above, right? And you need to follow a pattern. Where this is better.
The formal name for that is the death bit.
Possibly, yeah.
I don't think so. I think that's just you.
but the pattern, that's exactly what it's for. If you're wanting to cut something and you're on top of it, it just makes it easier. And it's not a everyday use bit, but it's a bit that when you need it, you really need it.
So I want to talk about, since we're talking about CNCs, since we're talking about routers, there's one thing I do want to talk about. Now, I don't have any affiliation with any of these companies, but I do believe that CNCs are so much more affordable nowadays that more and more DIY people should be looking into them. This is the CNC for newbie, new carve. I would tell you to stay away from X carve or Shapeoko. They're just not very sturdy or strong. It's my opinion. It's also the opinion of Impulse Audio. He had Next Curve. I have a Shapeoko. I plan to upgrade. But something like the CNC for newbie, new carve is a really nice one. The Ooze Nest Workbee is another nice one. They have screw drives in them. Guys, you can get these easily like 4 foot by 4 foot for $2,000, $2,500, somewhere in that range. And if you want a smaller footprint, you can get them for under $2,000. So I'm telling you that because a lot of people think that these things are just astronomical and out of the world. You can't afford them. And I think they've really gotten to the price now where if it's something you're interested in, you could try it. And those would be a couple companies that I'd be tell you to. Oh, yes. And Projects by Brian. Check out his channel. Let me show you him. He he just made his own, which is why he's saying that. And that's amazing. It's really cool. You guys got to check out his channel. And by the way, Brian, congratulations. Brian just became a new father too. So congratulate him. Good job, Brian. We are rooting for you. We know you're going to make a great dad, man. Excited for you guys.
Yeah, thumbs up. You're tracked for 18 years, bro.
You're never going to have money again.
Well, after they're out of college, maybe. But then the grandkids come, and yeah.
Then grandkids come.
Oh man! Speaking of router bits, I mentioned I had a video come out talking about the top 10 tools you can get at Harbor Freight today, and I suggested everyone stay away from every router bit that they sell at Harbor Freight, and it's for good reason because I've tried them. I wanted to give them a fair shake, and I got them, and they not had issue with them not only coming out of the router, like they're so dull that they were working their way out of the router even after I really tighten them, but they burn up. You got a lot of chuffing on the cuts, and it was a bad deal. But pick that I didn't have on here, Skill bits at Lowe's, pretty affordable, and they're not the best bits, but they are good bits, and you're not going to have an issue with them.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about Yoneco typically too, is for the price, they're really good. If they were more expensive, I wouldn't buy them.
That's usually the route that I take. If the Yonico bit's 20 and the white side bit is 40, my question is the white side bit twice as good? Will it last twice as long? And that bit that I bought, that particular one, I wouldn't endorse it anymore.
Did you cut that in stages and depths, or did you go one pass with the 1 inch?
I probably just did one pass.
That's why I
which
burned
was
up.
probably why.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're pretty sure this is user error.
See, that's a new thing I learned recently. I used to, whenever I was cutting circles, for woofers, I would go one pass, and then I read somewhere you're only supposed to go a 1/4 inch for a 1/4 inch bit, and I started making multiple passes, and it goes a little bit quicker that way.
Yeah, and your bits last way, way, way longer. If you just do the depth, it's a pain when you're wanting to cut it out. You're like, I want this whole cut out right now. But if you do it in the steps, and I mean, you've already got the plunge routers. So on mine, I've got the cheap Harbor Freight version, but it's got 3 steps, and that thing, it cuts like a dream. I think I have a skill bit in there now, and it cuts like a dream.
Do you guys use Forstner bits?
Not
That's
as much.
on my wish list. I'd like to get some.
This is something that I think everyone, once again, you should at least look into, if not buy. Part of that is dependent on if you have a drill press. So one of mine is a Wen drill press. They're $100, very cheap drill press. They're not going to have a huge depth as far as like how far you can go down, but for $100, they're a really good drill press. But those Forstner bits, they'll chew out a circle, but they'll leave it solid. So most of the time when you cut a circle, it just cuts the edge, right? And the reason why it just cuts the edge is because that's going to be much easier for the bit to go through. But a Forstner bit will cut the entire circle out all the way down to whatever depth you need. So it's really good for flush mounting those push-in tweeters. So if you see those from like Parts Express, like the Dayton Audio push-in tweeters, and you're like, well, how do you get this in to push in perfectly? It's a Forstner bit. It's Forstner bit. Now I confuse myself.
That's handy for recessing for a magnet or something.
Absolutely. Well, and those push-in ones, literally, you need to have the exact size for them to really push in and get a good seal. And even on the outside, so you can get the outside depth right and get a perfect flush mount every time with the right size Forstner bit. So I'm a big fan of Forstner bits for that reason alone.
I like to use them on countersinking too, because then I could just take a dowel, the same exact size dowel, put it in, cut it flush, and boom. completely hidden.
I'm going to hold off on the Forstner bits until I get a good drill press, and then I'm going to get the biggest Forstner bits I can get my hands on, because that's got to be easier than trying to cut little bitty 3-inch circles with the router. And I'm not a big fan of any hole saw I've ever used. Maybe I just need to buy a more expensive hole saw, but it just feels like you're just grinding away forever.
Yeah, they're not great.
And Thomas Marshall's talking about how they are expensive, and they are. And so typically I tell you just buy the one Forstner bit you need necessarily if you're just doing one project, unless you need a big set, because then you end up having this set of all these Forstner bits and you only use one every once in a while. I usually have the sizes that I need. The other thing that they're good for is feet for like a speaker box or something like that. When you route it out the external side and then screw it in, it's a lot more sturdier, and it's not going to, hopefully rip the screw out.
Right. And there was a reason that I did not recommend the Harbor Freight drill presses. Unless you're getting up into the $300 ones, they're pretty terrible.
What'd you say, drill presses?
Yeah. The especially like the small one, it was less powerful than my Black & Decker 12 volt.
Are you talking about at Harbor Freight?
At Harbor Freight, yes. Yeah, the Drill Master. They got like a $69 one. So that one's terrible.
Wen is this cool company. It's WEN. They're on Amazon. I have some links in the description. And the reason why I like Wen is I have their air filter system, which, guys, if you go to Woodcraft and you go to buy their air filter system, guess what? It's the exact same one, and it's going to cost you 3 times the price. And so, I mean, Wen is one of those companies that, are they always the highest quality? Not necessarily, but when they're 3 times, I've had my Wen air filter system for, I don't know, 3-4 years now. And I paid like $100 and some for it. And I could have paid like $500 or $350 or whatever at Woodcraft. It's just crazy. So I'm a fan of Wen.
Yeah. I've heard good things about the Wen, and I've heard good things actually about the Harbor Freight air filtration system as well.
Oh, really?
Use that one too. So
I didn't know Harbor Freight had an air filter. I know they got the big dust collector, but I haven't seen
that's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. So I'm actually talking about the air filter where there's like a filter that goes through. So any dust particles that are left in the air, it filters through that filter and cleans up your shop.
Yeah, the dust collector, like they do a mod to it to get it the same way. But yeah, that's essentially what they're trying to do with it.
Like to have
like with the Cyclone
canister on top and replace the bag. Needs a canister.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Justin, what you got for us, man?
What have I got? I tell you what, I'm going to go with something a little bit different here. Hang on. Let me reach down and get this.
Maybe reach down and get that. He's always reaching down to get something. So, maybe he should keep it on his table or something.
The table's not big enough. Hang on a second. Talk about something else while I grab all this stuff real quick. Y'all skip over me for.
Well, we were talking about you.
I got one right here that we can share.
Okay,
this one's quick. It's simple. Let me pop it up for you real quick.
And that's the thing, guys. The tools should be worth it because they make your life easier.
Now, this right here is a long nose marker. If you've ever tried to trace something on a project that's already built and you need something very thin, this will save your life marking stuff out. Whether it be a hole, some kind of template you're trying to work with. This is $8. It seems expensive for one marker, but it's worth it in spades, in my opinion. If you never used one, when you need one, you'll know that you need something like that because you're looking for some kind of thin pencil or a pen.
So it's interesting. I've never used that. I always use just mechanical pencils because I can get them at the dollar store for $5 or $6 for $1 or whatever. But that seems interesting. That I like how
there's a lot of holes
it is
that you can't get a pencil in, or if you're trying to trace something perfectly and the pencil, like even the edge of the mechanical pencil might hook on it. Well, you can really angle it in there and get it really close.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. How long that's a cool idea. It's almost like a big syringe.
Yeah.
Justin, we're ready for you.
unmute my
You're
microphone
muted.
here. I've got kind of a set of things here. Just as sure as I talk about this, that's when I'm going to lose a finger or something. It's really important that you have your safety equipment. And so I got one of these dust masks that kind of wrap over your face, like, and that's kind of handy. And I would recommend that. And these are some decibel defense ear protection that are designed for shooting sports. And it's just so much easier to work on things when you're not going deaf. It's easier to enjoy music later when you're not going deaf.
Let me stop you for a second, Justin, because you just reminded me of something that I didn't put on the list that I want to throw on there, and I don't think a lot of people know about them. Those that you just had, I've never used those ones, but the ones I do like are at Harbor Freight, but they have a battery in them, a AA battery, and you can turn it on, and it shuts everything off except for anything like, I don't know, below 85 decibels or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And what's nice about that is if you have someone come in the shop, right? Like my family might come in the shop while I'm working, I can hear them come in and I don't get scared while I'm at my machine. So if you're working on a table saw, all of a sudden someone's like, hey, what's going on? And you're like, oh, crap, there goes my finger. Where, if you have those on, you turn it. I like those. I've never used the decibel blockers, but, you reminded me of that. So I just wanted to mention it.
And I'm a huge fan of the gripper push block. And the thing I like about the gripper is this piece in the middle right here is adjustable. And so you can move it around. And so if you've got to make a cut on the saw, you can kind of reposition this and then straddle, these grooves wherever you need them at. And the other handy thing is this side piece. So if you've got something small you're trying to cut, I use this a lot when I'm routing a small piece. You drop down that side piece, and then you've got support on the table for your work pieces here, and the table goes here, and you can just move this thing all around. And you can see even on this one, if I can get up close, you can see where I nicked it with a saw blade. And it's like, that's what it's for. So that saved a finger. So I have more fingers now because I nicked this thing on a saw blade.
People swear by that. I've never used it, but I know people swear by those grippers.
Yeah.
They're not cheap.
I hold my breath, wear in-ear monitors, and be careful.
That's why we call them 9 fingers.
Yeah.
And don't forget your eye protection. We want everybody able to see us on the next week's show. So don't go out there and blind yourself with sawdust or something hitting you in the eye.
It's actually important. We don't really talk about safety equipment a lot, and that is something that is very, very important. And I get called out on it sometimes, even on my channel, where people say, hey, you didn't wear the proper safety equipment. I appreciate that. Sometimes I don't always put my dust mask on, and I probably should. Yeah,
and now that I've mentioned it, I'm going to get caught on a video not using it or lose a finger, because a surefire way to make sure you hurt yourself is to give a preaching to people about safety. Next thing you know, zip, there goes the finger.
Yeah. Guys, I want to talk about something that I think everyone should have. And I really do believe this. And they've come down so cheap in price now. I think that they're affordable. And I know Brian, Projects by Brian, is going to agree with me. I know he is. And if he isn't, he's going to agree with me. I know he is. So here it is. Now, guys, when I show you this, all right, don't get like upset or whatever. I can't even find why can't I find my application window? Oh, it's because it's considered a tab. That's why. You know what? I'm just going to tell you what it is. Oh, there it is. Bam. All right. So here it is. Can you guys see that?
3D printer.
It is a 3D printer. Guys, these are so cheap nowadays. This is $400. They actually used to be cheaper, but with COVID, I think the prices went up. It was closer to $300 when I bought it.
This is you zoom in. I can't see anything. There's a red blob where the price ought to be.
This is the first 3D printer that I bought that I'm like, oh man, that I had it set up the same day and was printing good quality prints like an hour later. I've had a couple different 3D printers and I haven't been happy with them. This is the first one that I've really appreciated. You can hook it up either with a USB cable straight from your computer, or you can just run like an SD card to it, print things right off. The thing that I like about this one is the bed only goes down. So a lot of these 3D printers, the bed goes back and forth and the head moves. The head moves and that's pretty much it. And the other thing that I liked about this is it was so easy to assemble. I mean, literally a half an hour later, I was up and running because all of it comes basically pre-assembled. The only thing that you really have to plug up is the bed on the back, and then these 4 posts on the corner, and some motors and electronics.
This one cost?
This is the Ender 5. It's about $400. Yeah. And it's got a really good print volume, 220 by 220 by 300, which is, I don't know, around 12 inches or so. It's everything that I've needed to print on it, I've been able to print off of it.
I will say that for 90% of people that buy this, it is going to be exclusively a tchotchke printer. And that's what I call them, because they all print just what other people have designed off of Thingiverse, and they never actually get into the software and design stuff for themselves.
Yeah, and Brian also mentioned the Ender 3, which is another great one. It is cheaper. It is a little bit smaller. The bottom does move. I just didn't like that because I had hard times with my other one because of that. But I will tell you, with that 3D printer, even if you're printing off designs like other people have used, you can do a lot of really cool things. You can print off. Was it you, HifiVega, or DIY Audio guy? No, it was Justin that was saying, hey, it would be really nice to have a 3D printer just to print out for my tweeter pods sometimes to fit them in places where I couldn't normally print them. And, you know, once you get to you do have to learn designing if you want to do that, but still.
Yeah, most people, I think a lot of people buy these with the assumption that you basically buy this and it does it for you, when all it is it's a tool that you really need to learn how to use. Like if you buy a router, you're not just going to be cutting wood on day one. You need to learn some kind of router simulation tool to get it programmed. I mean, and you have to set your 0 points and all this stuff. So there is a barrier to entry, and if you're not willing to take that chance, you probably shouldn't buy either one of them.
I'm going to tell you, it's a lot less now. That I'm honest. Like, I was printing like within an hour, and I will tell you, you know, other people's stuff once again. But if you're okay, there's a lot of really great designs, even speakers that you can just take and print right off. Hexibase had made some. There's a couple other things. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I think it's worth it.
Well, if you're watching this channel, you're probably inclined to tweak on stuff like this. So
yeah,
I assume that if you're watching here in live chat now, you're probably okay if you get either one of these, because you're going to want to learn how to do it. You'll be watching YouTube videos and you'll figure it out. But like for most people in general, maybe not.
Yeah, and this is what Brian said. Some printers are easier than others to get started, but there's a lot of community support for the Ender printers, and he's right. And you're right too. It's not gonna be, you know, and maybe I am, you know, I don't want to lead people astray. It's not necessarily simple, but typically anything that there's a lot of support for at least that type of printer that you can just get on a Facebook community and say what's going on, and someone will be like, oh, and 5 minutes later you'll probably have it answered, or an hour or so.
Yeah, much like the DIY audio community, if you want to know something and you go to the right Facebook group, the right, you know, forum, you can find the answers, or there will be someone there willing to help you with the answers. So there is that. It's a community that's grown hugely in the past 10 years.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm going at. If you're interested in 3D printing, now is kind of the time to get into it, because it's cheap enough and it's good enough. Now, when I first had my first 3D printer, it was like an ANET A6. It was made out of plastic mainly. And that thing, every time you printed, it wanted to like shake on you. I mean, getting a good quality print on that thing was terrible. Everyone would be like, well, you got to print upgrades for it. And it's like, okay, but if I print upgrades with the printer that's not printing right, you know, like, it was, I just got tired of it. Eventually I was just like, forget it.
Yeah, for sure. I have another pick here. Let me click it up and show you. This is just another kind of random small thing. You guys had a lot of the big tools covered, so I wanted to bring something a little bit different, something that people don't always think about.
Yeah.
And let's see if we can get it to load. So this right here, it's just a combination square. You got a speed square and then a regular combination square. It's a little nice combo for $10. You'll use both. If you're doing any kind of woodworking, you really need both these. One or the other will do, but both of them will definitely help you out. The combination square is nice for marking, like if you need a 1-inch cut off something, you just hold your pencil and you make your 1-inch cut. If you need to find true 90, or you need to make a perfect cut, the speed square is great for that.
Or if you want to test DIY Audio Guy's first tool and see if it's actually square.
Yeah, see if it's square. But we're
find out.
assuming that this speed square is square, but
That's
who
true.
knows?
Yeah, these little things are they're just indisposable. You've got to have several just laying around. Handy to have.
And if nothing else, to check even your table saw square when you're done cutting.
Right.
Is your table saw square or not? Do you need to make adjustments to it or
And the cool
whatever
thing
your
about these
tool is?
Combination squares, if you look at that little brass fitting on the bottom, that's actually a scoring marker, and people don't even really realize that those come in the bottom of it. If you don't have a pencil handy, you can just score it.
Score, yeah. Things like this are the kind of thing that right around Christmas time you want to hey, check my Amazon gift list, for the stocking stuffers. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
And no
one.
one, if you got this for Christmas, even though it's $10, you're like, this is like, thank you. This is awesome.
Yes, I completely agree. What about you, DIY? We haven't heard from you in a while. I want to make sure that we get some of your tools
I talk
in.
too much, so y'all, I don't mind sitting back listening to y'all listen. So I've got one that's a little out of character for me, and that's, I don't know, I feel like my whole night's out of character because I like cheap tools. I'd love to go into Harbor Freight because you look and it's, oh wow, a clamp for $6. This is good stuff.
So DIY Audio Guy's new song. I like cheap tools and I cannot lie.
Not lie. No.
All
This
right.
is one that is not a cheap tool. It's way too expensive for a knife. I think the brand is Olfa. And I was just walking through, I forget if it's Lowe's or Home Depot, one of those things. And I walked by them and I saw this and I thought, wait a second. Look at this knife. It has this little piece of metal on the end of it, right? That you can use as like a little tiny pry bar. And what I used it for was carpeting a box. If you got a groove you want to carpet through, so you cut a groove into the box, stuff the carpet in. That's a perfect carpet stuffer on the back of this $15 knife. And it's decent sharp. It does a perfectly fine job. It's a quality blade. What I don't like about it is this switch right here doesn't lock.
Yeah.
And so you'll be going and you'll hit the switch or you'll push something, it'll go in. And it's like, oh, that's not safe. But it was really handy when carpeting because you can cut, draw it in, make sure you draw it in before you turn it over, and you can go around things and push the carpet in. And it's just pretty handy for, you could use it as a screwdriver in a pinch for a flathead screw, slotted screw. And it's a little too expensive for what it is, but it's the only one with that little piece on it.
Well, and if you're going to go with the breakaway type blades, that's what that is, right?
Yeah, it's breakaway.
So Alpha is the king of breakaway blades. And if you're doing work like carpeting, like if you need this tool professionally, it's well worth the $15 because it's quality. It doesn't bend a lot. The blades are easy to break away. And like you said, it's got the extra little feature of
normally I just like grab the little 25-cent cheap ones at the counter at Harbor Freight and keep a couple of dozen of those laying around, just throw them away when they're dull. But this is the first time I've gotten an expensive knife like that. It's nice. And again, had it not been for that metal piece on the back, I would have left it there. But I saw that and I thought, hey, that's actually pretty handy.
Yeah, that's actually nice. And those knives in general are good to have for DIY. No matter, I use them all the time.
Yeah, pretty constantly have one of those doing something with it.
Yeah.
Nick, what do you got?
So I do have another one. I was going to pull it up. It's another Chrome tab. A lot of us with DIY like clamps. Clamps can be very expensive, but I don't think a lot of people realize you can make your own clamps with something like this. There's all kinds of different ones that are used. This is Bessie's version of this, but basically all you do is you take a metal pipe, whatever size the diameter is. In this particular case, it's a 3/4 inch. They sell 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch. I just picked out Bessie because Bessie just makes really nice quality products. And you just slide whatever size pipe you want through there and you can make these. So a lot of people say, well, I can't afford a 6 foot, 8 foot, 5 foot clamp or whatever you need, or even 4 foot clamps can be very, very expensive. Something like this, if you can get the 1/2 inch pipe for a good price, can be very cheap to build your own. And they last really, they'll last you forever, really. I have quite a few of these that I've made myself, and I think that they're worth the value if you can do it properly.
You use these with PVC pipe, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Give that a try.
I'll tell you what, Rob, you try it out and then get back to us.
Yeah. Oh man.
And the key to making that affordable is to find scrap pipe that's still straight.
Well, yeah. So, and you don't necessarily have to buy it scrap as long as you know somewhere that you can buy pipe and get it cut at a certain size, but it's one of the easier, cheaper ways to get longer clamps.
Yeah. And you could buy pipe chain cutters pretty cheap, like $10-15. And even if the pipe is slightly bent, you're probably, if you're going to be tweaking on these, you're going to bend the pipe a little bit anyways. Just over time, it kind of happens. So it depends on how bad it is, I guess.
Yeah, I think that they're worth it, especially with them. I also put some Rockler clamps in there that I really like. Harbor Freight, I think we all have said that we love Harbor Freight regular clamps, like their F-style clamps, but their bar clamps, like those, but their bar clamps are not good because they're so weak in there that when you start to tighten them, they bend and twist. Yeah. And people have put like wood in there and stuff to keep it from doing that, but in general, they're just not very good. I've used the Rockler ones quite often. They go on sale every once in a while on Rockler's website, and whenever they go on sale, I usually just pick up 2 or 3 every time, and I like those as well.
I've broke every kind of Harbor Freight clamp except for the aluminum clamps. The F style, the handle twist off sometimes after time, and even the black and gray ones. I have the ratcheting ones. Those break, quite often, but every single one of those has a lifetime warranty, and I have taken every single one of those back and gotten a brand new one. But the thing is, you don't want that to fail in the middle of a project.
Yeah,
and I have so many that it's fine because I can use another one to get me by until I return this. But if you only have 8 clamps, 6 clamps, 4 clamps, I would suggest the aluminum ones from Harbor Freight if you can afford it, because I think they're worth it, and they don't bend as much, and they have nicer connections. That's my favorite ones from there.
The inexpensive ratcheting clamps, those are the ones with the handle you squeezed, right? So far, my failure rate on the ones from Harbor Freight is 100%. Every single one of them has failed, and
they don't seem like they have as much clamping force.
No,
either. Like some of the ones.
Those are definitely light duty clamps.
And down in the comments, the True Voice of Reason just said, "Don't forget strap clamps." And strap clamps can be really handy for smaller projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say also, True Voice Reason is glad. We're so glad to have you back. He's been missing for a while. I guess he hasn't been feeling very good, but we're really happy to have him back now. So good to see you back, man. Glad to see that you're recovering and feeling better.
Yeah, for sure, man. Don't let that COVID get you down.
You can build almost anything with Harbor Freight Parts Express in a lumber yard. That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, if Parts Express and lumber, you can almost tear anything down too.
Is Parts Express website still down?
No, it was down last night. Oh,
okay,
Jeff, we talked about
going there last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did too when I was trying to do my final edits of the video and I couldn't get on. And I'm like, well, I guess the site's not going on this.
I thought it was sometimes in my room, it's the farthest away from the Wi-Fi. So I thought it was that. And then I was like, well, just turn the Wi-Fi off and use cell signal. And it still wasn't. I was like, something's going on.
It's got to be hard when your entire business is based on your website and you redo your website and the darn thing crashes and fails.
I feel bad for them because I know that they're having a heck of a time with that, and they're not obviously happy about it. So, guys, I'm going to bring one up that I know that every one of us would agree with. That's very, very nice to have, and I only saw it on mine, but I think that everyone would agree with these. And this is just some I picked off Amazon, but you can pick up different ones. But T-tracks, I think they're very useful. Any workbench that I build, although I haven't put them in my new router workbench yet because I haven't decided if it's staying that way, you can use these T-tracks for. And the cool thing is, especially if you have a small shop, like a lot of us have, is you can make these, like if you use with either Rob or I showed you with the router mount or the under mount, where you can build your own router table. You can turn that router table also into an outfeed table. And then you put these bar clamps. I'm sorry, these, I call them bar clamps. I don't know what I'm saying. These T-tracks on there. And then you can also put like a fence on your router table then and take it on and off. You can also clamp down wood if you need to sand it and not make it move. Just in general, I think T-tracks are good. The one thing I would tell you to, cheap T-tracks, pay attention. If you look inside these holes here, you'll notice that these ones have all been chamfered out. So when you set your screw in there, it'll sit flush. The cheaper ones don't do that. And so then you'll have to chamfer it out so that your screws sit flush. So I would just tell you, just buy a little bit nicer ones so you don't have to worry about that.
I happen to know a guy that made a video about how to make your own T-tracks.
Oh, yeah? Was it you?
Yeah. No.
I see. I'm going to disagree with you because what I would do is I would buy a cheap Yonico bit. It's technically it's a keyhole bit or a slot cutting bit, and you can make your own. Because think about it, a T-track like that, you've got to route out a slot for the T-track anyways, and so just use a bit to route it out.
So here's my opinion on that. Your tabletop is whatever it is. So if we use a router bit to route out our T-track and we use enough force to now rip that T-track a little bit apart, right? Because you can do that with that MDF. You start clamping it too much, it'll lift that MDF up, right? It can. So if it does that, then you've ruined the top of your table and then you have to redo it. So for me, I would rather have a metal T-track. If anything happens to this T-track, I can replace it. But
you're not going to lift it up though, because you're doing a compressive force, because you're going to have a stop block or some kind of thing that your clamp or whatever is mounted in. And so the bolt from the bottom will be pushing up and the mount itself is going to be pushing down. So it's going to compress from both ends. So it's very unlikely to rip out.
I don't know, man. I've pulled up T-tracks before. So
maybe you just screwed them down a little too tight there.
Yeah, I am. I'm forceful.
He wants it to stay in place. Don't move, he said.
Don't move. Stay there. I mean, yeah, you can use harder material like Craig Engelman says, and not MDF. Use something like an oak or something. But I still like these better. But I mean, if you want to do it the other way, it's definitely cheaper. Definitely.
Wait a minute. I swore Craig Engelman said tools have been done. Pass.
Wait,
I swore I seen that when I first jumped in the comments.
Hey, we must have been doing a good enough job. Settle down.
Yeah.
I want to highlight this because I think this is a really good point. What do you guys think about this? Dogman says, when I get tools, I tend not to buy new. I usually get them from a store here in town, but I'm just cheap. But what are your thoughts on getting used tools?
Oh, that's the jam right there. If you can find a quality used tool at an auction or a pawn shop or a yard sale, I mean, that is the way to get them if you can, especially if you're just starting out.
I agree, but I'm really picky about the used tools that I buy. They've got to be really cheap, because it's nice to have an owner's manual. It's nice to have, you've got all the parts you hope you have all the parts when you buy it new. At least you've got some recourse if you don't have all the parts. There's tons of, used skill saws for sale with blades that are 99% rust. You just got to be real careful and real picky. And that's, most of the time I walk by them because I'm looking at them going, that's not cheap enough to justify buying it used.
So I'm
even a bigger tightwad the Dogman is. So
here's what I found out with tools. Everyone buys them. Not everyone uses them. It's just the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
And you can find a lot of high quality, good tools cheap on various places. I've already mentioned Justin's mentioned pawn shops before in the past. I know he likes pawn shops. I've mentioned if you live, especially in the East Coast, a good thing is your auctions.
Right.
Any home auction, you're going to be able to get cheap tools for really cheap. Like I said, my first really nice cabinet grade table saw came from an auction, and I paid like $100 for it. So,
the big purchase stuff, like you said, a cabinet saw, that's something that you don't often see. But when you do see it at an auction and you can pick it up cheap, you definitely want to pick up something like that, because big ticket a cabinet saw is going to cost you $2,000 for an entry level cabinet saw. So
yeah, and Thomas and Jesse are onto it. They say estate sales, and they're absolutely right. And estate sales, estate sales often are people that are a little bit older, typically, and they a lot of times have invested in some decent, good quality tools. And when I bought mine for $100 from that, it was basically an estate sale, and the guy, same thing, he had really nice tools set up. I mean, you could have bought anything you wanted there for cheap, but I only brought a limited money. So,
and I think Thomas Marshall, I think he's a contractor, so I'm sure he's really, if he can hit those up and get tools for his guys and himself, he's probably scooping up what he can, quality stuff anyways. Sometimes, like, if you run across one of these old worm drive skill saws, those are the best. If you haven't used a worm drive skill saw, those things absolutely murder regular circular saws.
So Brian Rawlson brought up Diablo Blades, and Diablo Blades are typically Home Depot. Diablo is, which most people don't realize, Freud. They're made in the same factory and everything. Now, I don't know if they use the same steel or anything else, but I know they're made in the same factory, and they typically are very good blades. And I also like Diablo blades, and when I can buy them and when they go on sale, I also use Diablo, one of my favorite blades to use on my table saw, miter saw, things of that nature.
Yeah, I just picked one up. I've installed it. I'll use it on the next build.
Yeah, and those Diablos, they're locally, you can find them at the Home Depot. A lot of these higher end bits you can't find anywhere else. It's going to cost you some money. Like, they have router bits as well, but I think they're worth it. I think the blades are worth it. Even the Sawzall blades, the router bits, even the Diablo sandpaper is pretty freaking awesome. I'm typically like a 3M guy when it comes to sandpaper, but I've tried some of the Diablo sandpaper, and that stuff just lasts. It doesn't get clogged up like most sandpaper. That's something that we didn't talk about. Sandpaper. Don't buy Harbor Freight sandpaper.
No, that stuff. One pass, you're done. Although I do buy some sandpaper off Amazon. I didn't link it, and I'll buy it in bulk, so you'll get like a bunch of it. Because the problem is, even at Home Depot, when you go to buy Diablo, they give you like 10 pieces of sandpaper, and it's like $30 or something. I mean, it's crazy expensive for what you get. So I almost always buy mine off Amazon, but you do have to be careful because you can buy some really junk stuff off Amazon as well.
Yeah. So far, like the contractor grade 3M stuff at Home Depot has served me pretty well. But if like for 40 and 60 grit or 80 grit, I buy the 10 sheet Diablo, and it's like $6. And that stuff just, I mean, it's almost like you got a thickness planer if you really wanted to get crazy with it.
Yeah. Now, they're talking about sandpaper that is washable. They do have sandpaper that's washable. It typically looks like a grate. And you can wash some of that stuff out, but most sandpaper isn't, unless it's and it's not really washable, but they do have some that's made specifically for wet sanding. So what I would say is if you're going to get higher grits, like 600, 1200 grit, get the ones that can be used with water, because you're going to most likely be wet sanding at that point in time. You're not probably going to be doing just a regular sandpaper at 1200 grit or 2000 grit.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys, we are almost out of time. We do have our patron exclusive broadcast right after this as soon as we end. So we will be switching right over to that. We're excited. I hope that you guys brought some hydration stuff with you, some water or something. Go ahead. Let's talk about what we have coming up on our channels, and then we'll head out.
All right, I'll go first, I guess. I have 12 Talk coming up Wednesday. We're going to do a show. I'm not sure what we're going to do the show on just yet. We're kicking around a few ideas. But then Thursday, do sound advice with Dean. And then, Monday I'll have something coming out. No, reverse polarity. Sorry, I do too many shows.
Not happening.
Yeah. I've got a review of a new multimeter and oscilloscope coming up. I've already filmed it, and it's scheduled to drop on Friday. My patrons will get early access to that video.
I like that.
Yeah, and if you're a $10 patron, you'll be talking to us in a few minutes as well.
Yeah, which will be exciting. Now, the last but not least, I just put out a new video. You guys have really supported that well, so I really appreciate that. That was the $80 subwoofer that basically goes 22 hertz flat, F3 at 22 hertz. It's a pretty exciting build, and you guys have seemed to really like that. So thank you for the support on that. I really do appreciate it. I have a couple other things going on. I don't have any builds coming up this week. I am going to get some Cartesian speakers. They did tell me that they're going to send me some. So this is a speaker company that you guys have never seen, most likely, on the market. So it's a new to DIY speaker company. So I'm excited to bring that to you. And then I'm going to do a video this week, but it's probably going to be one talking. And I haven't decided if it's going to be about the importance of watts or if it's going to be about something else, why a speaker can measure well but not sound good. I haven't decided which one yet, but one of those two will be coming out this week.
Oh yeah, sounds like very easy topics to explain in a short video.
Yeah, very simple. You guys. Well, thank you, Troy, true voice of region. I appreciate that. All right, guys. We are going to let you guys go now because we got to go switch over to the other broadcast. So make sure you switch over to that one. We'll see you guys later. Have a wonderful night.
Bye.
We're out.